before today sharing just a preliminary remark. Normally these sharings are very informal and straight from my heart, and the only thing that constitute a kind of very simple organizing principle is the fact that recently I have been teaching a course, and usually on Sunday I share with you what I taught on Saturday during the evening. But even then, I didn't have the time. Usually I wouldn't have the time to do any preparation or making notes for you. But today you can see there are some notes, and this is thanks to Nagasena Shraman, and actually I just shaped some of the thing he has typed, and he is doing a PhD on the Buddha-Dharma as creative education, and I'm one of the supervisors. So in the course of supervising him, that certain thoughts came to me, and he make notes. And so this is just a sample, just an example. Coming back to the class on Saturday, as I've said, every year I select different sutta, different topics, and nothing is really repetitions. And the other thing is, as I've said, each class is a unique experience that cannot be duplicated. So today we can't even duplicate the way we went through. I think some of the members here in the morning, they were with me at night, last night in my class, and they will tell you they went through it's not just an academic exercise, but participating, listening, and I was speaking not just from the text but also from my heart and my own experiences. So it's a very unique experience, only for those members who are actually in the class. So I can't claim that I'm able to duplicate that kind of experience, and I want it to be that way. I want to set my example to show that academic study, even very high quality academic studies, can be done in Buddhist studies among Buddhists, also as a spiritual experience, and as an opportunity, at least. Maybe we can claim less, at least as an attempt to integrate your heart, your emotions, your feelings into your brain, or with what you understand, knowledge and inspiration. And that is the type of thing I'm demonstrating. People don't understand why do you have to choose a course? You've been teaching, Theravada Buddhism, Pali text for so long. You should now teach a different subject to attract people. I'm not interested in attracting more people. I'm interested in getting people who are really keen, who are very concerned with understanding the Buddha's message, and through Buddhist studies, derive inspiration and apply to their life. This is what I would emphasize as my own version of applied Buddhism. So it's not the same as a type that is being emphasized today in Hong Kong society, in some institutions. So anyway, in the past few weeks we have been on a journey to investigate how the Buddha functions as a creative teacher, because we believe that the Dhamma is creative education. What does that mean? I've explained to you. And in creative education, you must have creative teachers. Creative teacher is not someone who has simply fancy ideas, and or even who are highly intellectual or intellectually sophisticated. Those are useful skills, but they are not the essential characteristic of a creative teacher, or what we mean by one, a creative teacher of the Dhamma. He should be one who is first of all himself well versed in the Dhamma, and who has skillfulness, obviously, I said, but much more than that. He must have sincerity. He must have compassion in teaching the Dhamma as a creative teacher, teaching Dhamma as creative education. The only intention of the teacher is to inspire the student, to try to transform the student, to share the Dhamma with the student so that the student can be transformed. When the student can be spiritually transformed, then that becomes a creative education. I have said that, a teacher need not be a perfect person. Well, there actually isn't any perfect person except those who are, I'm sure you can agree that there are very, very few in the world. But we must have the minimum condition of sincerity, compassion, and some amount of wisdom, and some amount of experience. And he himself taking medicines, and I think his diabetes is not very light either. But he is functioning as a specialist in diabetes, and is saving many people because he shares the medicine, the knowledge, the care as a diabetes teacher. So it's like this. We need not expect Dhamma teacher, Buddha teacher to be perfect. That would be hypocrisy. We don't pretend to be like this. But we must function as a sincere, compassionate being, truly concerned with sharing the Dhamma with the students so that the student can be transformed. So the Buddha, you can say then, is the spiritual, the creative spiritual teacher par excellence. He exemplifies an ideal creative teacher of the Dhamma as creative education. So that's the theme we have been pursuing, and preceding that, we have talked about the importance of the total context, total environment, using, to borrow a term from Carl Rogers, the emphasis on environment, for transformation, for the effect of spiritual progress to happen. It's not just merely your individual intention, effort that is necessary. Another important factor is what is called environment, or we call it the totalistic context, the spiritual context. For instance, having a teacher, particularly having, in general, what we call spiritual fellowship. That's what we emphasized, and we look at a couple of important passages in the Sutta this year, in which the Buddha emphasized that indeed spiritual fellowship is the whole of the spiritual life. We don't want to repeat that. Following on that, we went on to examine the Buddha, how he functioned as a spiritual, what is unique about him, how he exemplifies as a creative teacher. And I have mentioned those just now, important key conditions. And we see this in him. And for this, this year we particularly the Bhadāli Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, and we see that the Buddha certainly embodies all these conditions like sincerity, compassion, and so on. And also we see how he takes into consideration the different types of personality or characters that he's dealing with. So in other words, he is not mechanical. He is not 咪死板嘅, never be like this. And he's flexible. In that way, he is creative. In that way, he succeeds creatively. He succeeds as a creative teacher. So he considers different types of mentalities, different types of psychology, different types of needs, different occasions even, and different type of backgrounds. And we see in the suttas that in each and every case, he becomes successful. So, in all these senses, we look at the Buddha as the ideal creative teacher, or the creative teacher par excellence, right? So, in the Bhadāli Sutta, we saw a very interesting interaction. There's another thing. A creative teacher interacts with the student. But sometimes the interaction is not in a stereotyped manner. You know, there are many ways to interact. And in the case of this sutta, we saw that he was recommending a training factor. And note that it's called training factor, Sikkhapada. It's not a commandment, it's not an imposition of rules and laws. And he shared the experience of having only one meal. And he told the monks, the bhikkhus, that having only one meal a day make him felt very light in body and mind, felt very physically fit, mentally fit, and at ease. And he dwells in pasuvihara, as a state of ease throughout. And he said, why don't you try? You should do the same thing. You see how we look at then the way we look at the historical fact concerning the way all these so-called rules are originally laid out by the Buddha. They're not really laid out as rules, not in an institutional sense. Not an institutional or organizational requirement, in other words. It's a recommendation. Recommended with a purpose. The purpose is for training. And nothing is forced onto the monks, the students. So the Buddha said, no, I do like that, and this is the benefit I get, and you should try it. In fact, last night we shared another relevant sutta. We're going to talk about that perhaps next week. That's related to this theme. Of course, he's here talking only about eating one meal a day. You know, nowadays it can become a very mechanical, rigid rule. One cannot eat after, say, in some places they say exactly after 12, or in some places you are allowed to eat up to something like 20 minutes past 12, and not 21 minutes past 12. And that kind of thing, and what you can eat and what you cannot eat, what you can take. And some places I was told that you can even take cheese. You know, cheese is considered to be acceptable, but to me cheese is of course something solid, and etc. etc. But we saw in this sutta and in some other places, we have proof that historically there wasn't a rule like that. The Buddha didn't sit down and imagine, okay, I have an institution, I have an organization, let me formulate 150 rules or 250 rules, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one by one on a computer, and then send out a circular. You must do like that. All my disciples, all members of my sangha must do like that. There's no must and no commandment, no enforcement in this manner. So this rule of not eating, or eating only once a day, was introduced in a very natural way. You might say in a very creative way. And it was a recommendation. And Buddha never forced on anybody. But it came to be practiced, I think, generally by most communities in the Theravada country, and not confined to Theravada countries. So we saw the Buddha introducing this rule, and let's recapitulate a little bit. At that time, there was a monk, apparently a very intelligent monk, but not only intelligent, but quite a character. A lot of ego in him, and but also highly intellectual, intelligent, and sincere. I think the monk certainly, when you read the sutta, you can sense that monk called Bhadāli was a very sincere monk. He was struggling. He was trying to transform himself, but he had to, has to move against the current of his past conditioning. That's exactly what's happening to all of us in a modern society, especially one that has been conditioned by modern values. I might say, unfortunately, by many negative Western values. Through the way we are educated, through the society, through the organization we join, the job careers we were involved with, and so on. So all these are negative backgrounds and negative conditionings that we have to be watchful about. But in any case, Bhadāli certainly was not westernized. There wasn't any system of Western education at that time. But he had his own also unique psychological difficulties in his personalities. We are all different. Genetically, we are different. Psychologically, we are different. We are born differently. And we understand that not only we, other people also are the same. And we have therefore to be more compassionate to others. When you deal with, for instance, people like who are autistic, let's say, you should understand sympathy that yes, they didn't have a choice. They were born like that. So we have to understand them. We have to accept them and try to help them, etc., etc. So the Buddha, as a creative teacher, certainly takes in consideration the different type of psychological orientations, different character types, mentality, and need, and so on. So Bhadāli was a good example. When the Buddha was introducing this rule, or rather was recommending this rule to the Sangha, all others happily accepted it, apparently. You see? And when it was being accepted, he stood and said, "Sir, sorry, I cannot. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make an effort to do that." And he gave his reason, of course. We have examined his reasons, the psychological significance of his reasons, because he felt that if he did like that, he would have remorse. He would have negative feelings, regrets in his heart, and that will ruin him. And he had a point there. But how did he come to be like that? Of course, it's another matter to be looked into. And we discussed that. Now, the interesting response from Buddha as a creative teacher is that he never forced onto Bhadāli. He left it to him. He never said, well, if you, up to you to choose, if you want to continue to be my disciple or to remain in my Sangha, you have to do it like others. Nothing like that. Or we have to punish you and put you on probation for some period. Nothing like that. All this punishment system, of course, there are some punishment system, probational system in the Sangha that eventually came into shape for very practical reasons, practical need. But certainly not in the Buddha's time. Not in these scenes that we witness when we read the suttas. That is the value of reading the suttas, you see. We are kind of brought back to the historical scenes, the historical context. When the Buddha was alive, as if we were with the Buddha. We had to learn to feel that way as we read these suttas. Not just to understand the Pali words, phrases, and grammar and so on. And so Buddha left it to him. For how long? For the whole of 3 months. And that 3 months is a very important period, 3 months. The 3 months is period during which the monks are supposed to be intensively practicing and very sincerely practicing and discussing the Dhamma, understanding the Dhamma, and so on. So during this intensive, emphatic period of spiritual training, nobody harassed Bhadāli. He was left alone for 3 months.
But Bhadāli, as a sincere person, felt ashamed himself, and he was struggling inside. He was confused. We saw the words. Later on, he confessed to Buddha that he was really confused at that time. But he didn't show his confusion. He showed that he was, I'm not wrong. I know what I'm doing. Why should I don't need to be suggested? And people like that. In this society, I've come across people like that. When you suggest something to the person reacts immediately in a very negative way. And this kind of people never change. Yeah? So Bhadāli perhaps had that kind of negative background psychologically. And nobody harassed him. But talking about environment, the factor environment, which includes, importantly, the factor of spiritual fellowship. We saw that operating in this sutta, you see, and it looked like that the other members of the Sangha were concerned about this person and thinking how to help this person, how to give him a chance to convince him instead of forcing on him. If you forced on that person would have reacted more and he would have left. In spite of his own sincerity and struggling, he couldn't take it and he would leave. You see, and you can't help that person that way. And then the opportunity came because at the end of the 3 months, and they were busy making a rope for the Buddha, and then this monk didn't want to take the credit for themselves, for making the rope, and they gave the credit to Bhadāli and said, look, Bhadāli came to him, and they knew that, although it was not stated in the sutta, when you read the whole content, you can feel and sense it that way. This is what I mean by creative experiencing of a sutta reading. And by the way, and he went to the other members. The fact that he went to the other members, it must be that he wasn't sure. Maybe he didn't want to say I was wrong, or and prepared to change. Please help me. How can I change? He didn't say those words. He couldn't come to that stage of speaking out that way. But the fact that he went to this to meet this at this juncture meant something to the monk, and they knew it. So the other monk said, okay, you take this rope. You take this rope and personally offer to our teacher, to the Buddha. Here's a chance for you to reflect on your wrongdoing. Don't think that it's just a small wrongdoing, a small transgression. But if you go on like this, you will never transform yourself. It will become a bigger and bigger difference. Don't let that happen. We saw those wordings, and I have emphasized that, right? And Bhadāli was really willing to do that. So he actually went to the Buddha. He actually confessed. He actually said sorry. And he confessed that, at that time he was confused. His mind was unwholesome. He was overwhelmed by the transgression. So that's why he transgressed. And he said, Buddha, please accept my transgression as a transgression. That word, as achayato, is very interesting. Now he's confessing not out of fear, because he was not punished. The Buddha didn't even scold him. Nobody was harassing him. Nobody was going to expel him, right? So there was no that kind of, there shouldn't be that kind of fear. No, he was not fearing anything. But he felt he wanted to bring out from his heart. First to face himself and to face the teacher. To face his own negativity. So he asked Buddha to accept his transgression as a transgression. In other words, he's aware of his transgression, that it is a transgression. I accept, I want to confess it as a transgression. Please accept that. And it's very interesting, the Buddha said, you know that you have transgressed out of confusion, out of a negative state of mind, unwholesome state of mind. And of course, we accept you. That means, of course, we, not I. The word is we. Mayang. It's very interesting because that shows that the Buddha is also emphasizing the spiritual transformational force or the factor environment for the transformation in this case. We means not just the Buddha, but the whole Sangha, other members who were helping, waiting for a chance, in a skillful way to help him to change. So the Buddha said, of course we accept you. Of course we forgive you. It's very interesting, right? And then the Buddha said, when someone sees a transgression as a transgression, and then wants to do something about it sincerely, then it is itself development, it is itself growth. It's growth in this spiritual discipline. In other words, the Buddha is accepting him not because, oh yeah, you conform to us, you become a good boy, a good monk, good member. I have another one who obeys me. Not like that. I can be even proud of you as a member of my congregation. No, it's for his own growth. The Buddha is pointing out, we accept you. We rejoice in your confession because it is for your own growth. This is what is meant by growth, development. We need to grow. Otherwise, forever, doesn't matter how old we grow in age, we remain as children psychologically. That's why we have problems. So the Buddha pointed that out. This is Vutti, he said. It must mean Dhamma Vinaye. Yesterday, also last night, I pointed out that word Dhamma Vinaye doesn't mean Sutta and the Vinaya rules, not like that. It's the whole system of spiritual training under him. This is, in other words, the whole intention of the Dhamma is not to provide institutional binding, regulation. Actually, truly speaking, one cannot be helped in that manner. The whole intention is to provide a process, provide a means for us to be transformed, for us to be changed. In that sense, the Buddha-Dharma is creative education. And when there is growth, it is creative. Creative means you come to new, higher dimensional experience. If you are a child before, psychologically, you come to grow, you come to higher level, you come to mature. This is a creative transformation. So the Buddha points out that I accept you, I forgive you from the perspective of you gaining growth. Not for the Buddha himself, not for the Sangha, not for the institution. So I think you should keep on reading many times. If you think I have heard about it before, and it doesn't have to be repeated, it itself is a wrong attitude. We need to be repeated. We need to be repeatedly reminded. That's why we have to read the Sutta many, many times. And to feel the Sutta, to feel the Buddha's compassion, the Buddha's wisdom, the Dhamma. Then only things sink down and transform us. Then only it becomes a creative, educational system. To use the word system perhaps is already not so good. Anyway, then having accepted and encouraged in this way, Bhadāli, the Buddha doesn't stop there. It's very interesting. The Buddha then give him a chance to interact with him. Let him ask some questions, clear his doubts. And of course, the Buddha also begins to be critical after accepting, the Buddha knows this time when had he been critical at the beginning and started to scold him too much, as I said, then that is not being a skillful teacher. We can't help doing that because we are not perfect like the Buddha. But the Buddha didn't do it. And the Buddha didn't say even anything negative. Buddha led to him, but now the Buddha knew the time has come. That person's mind is ready to listen to me, to listen to even my criticism. So we begin to give him some critical remarks. You know, were you really aware of what you were doing? You know, people were watching you, and the negative impact you had on the whole Sangha, and not actually on the whole Sangha, but actually more importantly on you. How people can misunderstand you, how people can reject you if you behave like that. All these things were pointed out by the Buddha in detail. Please read the Sutta. We don't have time to go through all this. We went through in the class. Then as I said, a creative teacher, that is the case of the Buddha, a perfect creative teacher, allows for interaction. But as I said, interaction doesn't have to be, again, a stereotype or rigid type. There are all kinds of interactions. To give you one example, for instance, you know, I've told you many times the story of Milarepa. His teacher interacted with him in a very unique way, because Milarepa was unique. And his teacher showed to be very harsh. Showed to be even like as if he was, there's Mapa, very unforgiving. But actually he was very kind. He was thinking that he had to do like this. He had to be stern. He had to be critical. He had to be, criticizing right on the spot, everything, so that his criticisms can help Milarepa on the spot. So many times Milarepa nearly gave up, but he never did. He was a type who can actually sustain, and his teacher knew it. And Milarepa couldn't understand what the teacher was doing, but he still had the same deep faith throughout. He never left the teacher. And to cut the story short, finally, he succeeded. And the teacher talked to him in a very friendly way, as a close friend. After that, then he knew the Buddha was trying to help him. The teacher, the teacher was trying to help him. So you see, this is one way of interactions. Sometimes it can be silent, and sometimes it's very difficult to communicate with certain types of students, and that is to say, through words, through the usual channels. But you can show it in your own personality, in your own emphatic behavior, or in your actions. If you are kind to that person, you really are concerned, the person will feel it. If you are forgiving, the person will feel it. The student will feel it. If you have a point in what you said when you were scolding the student, then slowly after thinking for a while, if the student is also a sincere person struggling, then he will get the message. Like in the case of Bhadāli, he will come to a state when he becomes receptive. So there are different ways for a creative teacher to help a student through the Dhamma as creative education. So coming back to this case of Bhadāli, then the Buddha began to criticize him and to point out to him that you are not aware of all these things. You thought that your egotistic way would be the best way. You say, why should I do? Why people say, why should I? Why should I? And I don't want. I'm different. And that kind of thing, that kind of mentality. So Bhadāli was listening and was beginning to accept the Buddha. The conditions were right for him to be receptive. And it was at this juncture that Buddha began to criticize and to tell him. Not only that, the Buddha then gave him another important chance, that is to ask questions to clear his doubt. And we saw that in the Sutta, then Bhadāli began to ask a series of very, very interesting, very, very meaningful, very, very important questions, at least important from the point of view of spiritual development, spiritual practice. he asked many interesting. We are going to share this in our future sharing. Hopefully, if I have the time and energy. So, first thing, as I said, these notes are actually typed by Nagasena, and I shape a little bit. And but the points are put correctly. And so we're going to just today look at just one or two questions that Bhadāli was allowed to ask the Buddha, and how the Buddha clarified or clear his doubts. When we have doubts, we should clear our doubts. In Buddhism, doubt has a positive function and also have a negative function. If you are irrationally doubtful, irrationally skeptical, then that is bad. And that kind of doubt can be a hindrance for you. If you have doubts and you don't want to clear your doubt, that's also bad. That's also a hindrance for you. But if you don't understand things, on the other hand, you should not blindly accept. You should question yourself. You question the teacher and ask. You can question politely. And sometimes you don't have the question directly, and you have to make it understood that you have some doubt in your mind. The suttas in the Buddhist tradition is very common. But you must make an effort to clear the doubts. So that's what we see in this sutta. So today we're going to just look at first one question. The Bhadāli noticed one thing. And maybe partly because of this kind of thing that he observed, that he became rebellious, in the Sangha. And he noticed that the Sangha members, the senior Sangha members, don't seem to be fair, to different types of offenders, different type of fellow beings who transgress in a similar way, or at least to him in a similar way. For instance, he says, he asked Buddha, why is it that in some cases, for a given transgression, the senior monks keep on kind of harassing the offender, keep on pointing out negative things and one after another, and very straightforwardly, and then wouldn't let him go. If the person tried to evade, if the person tried to and speak back impolitely, the senior monks would not hesitate to get at the person and say, no, you shouldn't do like that. I give you some time to think about it. I'm going to come back, and I'm not going to settle this point, but I'm going to come back to ask you a question you again. You have some time to think about it. And so the process, the litigation process would drag on that way. You see, it's a kind of an ordeal that the person had to go through. So it's only after a while, when the condition is right, and when the senior Sangha member feel that the whole process has helped the person, that the matter is settled. For the same transgression, on the other hand, by some other people, some other monk, another monk for instance, Bhadāli noticed that these elders let him off easily, quickly. Didn't seem to harass him, didn't drag on in the whole process. So he wanted to know, why is it like that? So surely it takes an intelligent person, observant person, in fact someone who is very concerned with the way the Sangha is operating, the way the system, the Buddha-Dharma is operating, to ask questions like this. And Bhadāli does. Then the Buddha explained to him, this is what you see. The Buddha enumerates 4, or you can say 5 cases. If you add the last one, it becomes 5 cases. Like this. He said, now in some cases, there are offenders who offend repeatedly. You can see that there's projected here. The Pali word is apinha apatika. Apinha means repeatedly, constantly, many times, one time or another, you know. So such a person has no concern about changing himself. He's not aware of the need to change himself. He doesn't accept that fact. This kind of person is a reactive type. Always think, why should I? I'm okay. I don't have it to toll. I have nothing to change. You know, people like this. And then, so they are reactive. They are not a creative type, they're the reactive type. They react according to their past conditioning. And they are also the hateful or resentful type. When you tell them, when you try to help them, they get angry with you. As I said, people even, upon being even suggested, immediately react to you negatively. I don't have to be suggested. I know what to do always. I have good training in the past and all that, you see. So there are people like that, very hateful, very resentful, and are not at all receptive. And the Sutta says that these people are not willing to align spiritually in the manner of, you know, thinking, okay, there must be a reason why the Sangha members, they don't have this kind of transgressions, and they are trying to help me. I must understand it. You know? And let's look at the recommendation. If they recommend that way, let me try to align that way. You might look at it as a kind of conformity, but not a type of group conformity in a negative sense. But it is a kind of, I would prefer to use the word alignment. Aligning yourself, allowing yourself to be drawn by the inspiration of the kindness of those who want to help you, who criticize you. Criticism it's absolutely useful if they are constructive. If someone criticizes as an enemy and says you are bad, that's why we don't like you, full stop, then of course it can be understandable that you reject it. You see, but in the context of a spiritual sangha, criticisms are meant to help you, and then you are told not just this is not proper, but the other way should be proper. Something constructive is said to you, at least you should consider it. So that is the willingness to align, to let me see how I can live according to the recommendation of this senior monk in such a way that they becomes happy. Not just to please them, but when they feel happy that you are progressing, then is a reflection of your own progress. Even if you don't quite fully understand why they recommend that way, but try it receptively. So the first type person does not have this kind of receptivity. He's not receptive. He's reactive. He's hateful, resentful, and he evicts. We say, why have you done that? No, I'm not really done that. Then the person goes on to talk about another thing. You know, this according to the Sutta is so, the observations in the Sutta is so insightful, so sharp, you know. It says the person just moves on to a different thing and try to evade, you see. So these kind of people, this kind of person needs to be dealt with slowly, progressively. That's why the monks go on to drag on this process. You know, as people here are listening, I know Some are already reacting. Some are positively negative. I'm just repeating what the sutta says, by the way. Yeah? So some find it interesting and something to put of thought. Others simply react. They don't like it because of their past conditioning. So there are people like this. So for these people, the Sangha, the Buddha said, that's why the Sangha, the senior Sangha members drag on the process. Another type, second type, also is someone who offends repeatedly and constantly. But fortunately, these kind of people, perhaps, they are this kind of person, perhaps transgressors because of lack of understanding, lack of mindfulness, not intentionally. And more importantly, these kind of people, the Buddha says, are not reactive. They are not hateful. They don't try to evade. They try to understand what's wrong with me. Whatever is it really something to be improved on? Is there really room for me to improve? This kind of considerate people. This is second type. Even though this person habitually offends, habitually transgress. So their mind is not negative, and more importantly, they are receptive. They are willing to try what has been recommended to them. So the Buddha says, for this kind of person, for the given same transgression, the Sangha members, we are talking about the other Sangha members who are spiritually more advanced and who are more positive, and so on, who understand the Dhamma more, understand the Buddha's teaching more, and who do not transgress in the same way. These advisors, these spiritual advisors, spiritual friends, they are the really useful, important spiritual friends. So the second type of offender, though they are also repeated offenders and constant offenders, but they are receptive. They're willing to try to align themselves. So for these kind of people, the Buddha said, these monks, these senior monks, they don't drag on. There's no point of dragging on. They only need to just very lightly suggest something, point out something, and leave it. There are people like this, It's not a question of intelligence. There's people who are extremely intelligent but extremely egotistical and hateful type. There are people who are not intelligent at all, but they are very receptive and very sincere. They are different type of people. So it doesn't really have to do with, really speaking, with intelligence. So there are people like that who are receptive. So then the Sangha members do not find any need to drag on. Now here you see something about the Buddhist system of discipline. It's not rigid, it's flexible. So that's where it differs from the kind of law enforcement, for instance, in society, in the world. So such a person, such a creative, receptive kind of person is let up lightly. There's no need to really drag on the process. Then number 3, there are some other type of offenders who don't offend repeatedly or constantly. They are what is called the aticca. You see, aticca, apattika, occasional or by chance. They just happen to have a transgressions, But they are also the negative type. They are also the reactive type, hateful type, you see, egotistical type, and they are not receptive. They are not willing to first give a chance to the senior monks who are trying to help, trying to give their advice. These kind of people, also, the Sangha member will drag on to make sure that the person get the message, and the person is help in different way, by interrogating in different way, by giving him various maybe assignment to do in the whole process, process of litigation. Give him a chance to sink down slowly and maybe understand. So therefore the process also drags on. Then number 4, it's also the case of someone or some people who transgress only occasionally. So a so-called chance offender. But the difference from the third type is, I think you can understand now, that this fourth type of person, though they transgress, they are not reactive, they are not hateful, they are not the negative, psychologically not the hateful type. So you see, the Buddha-Dharma, the Buddha himself, when we talk about the senior Sangha members, we are talking about the wisdom, the experience, the insight that these senior Sangha members have derived from the Buddha's teaching. Ultimately, it's the Buddha himself. The Buddha, when he explains like this, the Buddha is actually showing his approval, his endorsement to this way of dealing with different types of mentalities, this type of personality types. So the fourth type is that, yeah, he's also occasional or so-called chance offender, but he's not negative, not reactive. And what is more, he is receptive. He's willing to listen. So to this kind of person also, the senior Sangha members, let them off quickly. Settle the matter quickly. Then the Buddha gives one more example. He said, for instance, there may be a practitioner, you see, who sustains his struggle. He's struggling, he is trying, but he has only a little bit of faith, only a little bit of love. He has some love, some positivity, but hardly developed. Faith, yes, hardly developed. That kind of person, there are many people like that. So the kind of person also is trying to change, trying to struggle. So when the Sangha member, deal with such a person, the Sangha member has to be very careful. And this is where skill comes in. This is where wisdom comes in. This is where compassion comes in. You want to deal with each and every case, right, with the sole intention of trying to help the person, of transforming the person, and not dealing with in an institutional way. The person should be sacked if he transgress in this way or that way. He doesn't listen to me once, that's enough. Reject him. No, not like that. So when the Sangha member deals with a person like that, they have to be very careful, because why? If they are not careful, even that little bit of, the Buddha said, even that little bit of faith, that little bit of love or affection will be lost. Then he cannot struggle anymore. It's not that, we lose one member. We have one member less from the institutional point of view. But the chance is lost for helping, for transforming this person. So the Buddha says, such a person has to be dealt with very carefully. So here you see the flexibility. So the Buddha gives the examples of someone who has only one eye, single eye. If someone has only one eye, then the relatives, the kinsmen who want to help this person, would be very careful. When they want to, if he has some eye disease, then that eye disease has to be carefully, that the treatment has to be thought out very carefully, has to be done very carefully. Because if something goes wrong with that treatment, even that single eye remaining will be lost. He will be totally blind. Now we see this in in the hospital also. Someone who has only one eyesight goes to an optician. The optician will be very careful, extraordinarily careful. It's not that the optician is not kind or doesn't care about those with both eyesight, but you have to be especially out of the way to be careful to protect the only eyesight left for this person. So the Buddha gives a very telling example. So it's like this. If that person has only just a little bit of love, just a little bit of faith, let him develop this before he loses them. So your way of dealing with that kind of person will have to be different. So as I said, as the Buddha is describing and explaining why there are seemingly different treatments, to people who offend with regard to the same given offense, there are reasons behind. So this reflects how the Buddha functions, he himself functions. Although he's talking about the Sangha members, as I said, he endorses this. The teaching is from him, the training is from him. So all these instructions or explanations reflect the Buddha's own wisdom, own compassion, own sincerity. In the last example, the last case that he gives, things should be very clear. You see? And the purpose, the sole purpose of dealing with the persons who makes an offense, who is also struggling, and you have to understand that he is struggling. He is sincere, but he cannot stand too much. It's like someone who has just only one eye. You have to be careful. So it reflects the whole purpose, the whole significance, the whole meaning of the so-called Buddhist discipline. Not for the mere sake of the discipline, not for the mere sake of the rules, not from the perspective of institutional requirement and need, not from the legalistic point of view, but from the spiritual point of view. And that's why, with all these qualities, the Buddha always succeeds in every case that we see, at least judging by the cases recorded in the suttas. He transformed different types of people. And we have seen that in early years we have discussed some suttas, in which the cynics, some skeptic cynic, and they wanted to challenge the Buddha, they wanted to pull the Buddha down, as it were. They got ready their questions, and they say they are very sharp themselves, very clever. They're not even Buddhist. They're not interested in the Buddha as a teacher, but they wanted to meet the teacher to challenge the Buddha. They say, oh, if the Buddha answers in this way, we will catch him in this particular way. If the Buddha answers in that way, we're going to catch him in that particular way. So that in whatever way the Buddha answers me, my question, I frame my question in such a way that the Buddha will be caught, will be defeated, will be humiliated. See this? Highly negative, not only egotistic, but very, very negative, totally lacking any receptivity towards the Buddha. They went to the Buddha. An interesting thing is, after talking with the Buddha, through the skill of the Buddha himself as an ideal creative teacher, he transformed them. At the end, suddenly, this skeptic who had prepared all the questions to ask, and they didn't want to ask anymore. They felt so inspired by Buddha, they just could not help bowing down and say, Venerable Sir, from today onwards, we want to be your disciple. We take refuge in you. It's so touching when you read. If you are sincere and you read this kind of thing, this kind of description, it should be very touching to you. Suddenly, every time when I read, even now I read again and again and again, when I'm teaching, I feel very touched. And this is how the Buddha succeeds as a creative teacher. This is how the Buddha-Dharma is effective as a creative education. it requires, to summarize, it requires, among other things, the necessary conditions of accredited teachers. Now, we may not have all these conditions, but we may have some of these conditions, or we can at least emulate some of the conditions. And the students who are sincere to want to be transformed, who want to be benefited by Sangha, also they shouldn't react. As you recently shouldn't react. They should think. Because we are all actually experiencing the sutta, going through. I use the word experiencing, not just reading. In a spiritual manner, hopefully at least. Like reliving the historical events or the Buddha's encounters with this of the Buddha's way of transforming others. So we have to think for ourselves also. Not only just reacting to the teachers or to those who are senior, but we ourselves must think, is it really there's something is negative about me? Is it something that about which I can improve on? I can make myself more receptive, more sincere, and less hatred, less reactive. So if we read like this, if we go through it, as I say, as a spiritual experience, then we can be benefited by a sutta like this. So this is this is only part of our examination of how the Buddha functions as a critical teacher. So in the next few weeks, I hope to share with you further question and answers. This interaction between Bhadāli and the teacher. Okay, today we'll conclude here.